Chapter 9 The Road Back Home. There we were, thinking we were at the end of our careers, maybe even feeling sorry for ourselves. Then we got a wake up call. Life wasn't just about having record deals and earning gold records. Singing had always been our passion, but it became apparent there was so much more we had to do. It was a time of new beginnings, fresh starts, not endings. Lockerbie was our first reminder. It was around Christmas 1988, and we were in London doing Top of the Pops, which was the UK's top TV variety show. We were scheduled to tape two segments, one before another group that was booked on the show, then another the next day. We wanted to switch our performance schedules so we could get back home during the holidays. We hoped there was a flight going to the States with enough seats for all of us. Our travel agent checked, found out it was possible, and told us to make preparations. We were so sure that we were going to be on that flight that we called our families to let them know we'd be on the plane due in from London the next day. Then we tried to talk the producer out of keeping us that extra day. We begged him to switch our schedules so we could do both segments the same day. We told him we needed to see our loved ones, go shopping, and do our Santa Claus thing. When he wouldn't let us go, we were heartbroken. We even offered to do quick costume changes, whatever it took to make it happen so we could get on that plane. He said he wished he could accommodate us, but he just couldn't. He wouldn't budge. We had to wait one more day. We were so mad at him. Later that night, the phone started ringing with calls about a plane crash over Lockerbie, Scotland. That was the exact flight we would have been on, the biggest plane crash in recent history. A bomb on board had detonated, killing all 243 passengers, 16 crew members, and 11 people on the ground. We all looked at each other and said, "It looks like the Lord's got more for us to do." We felt so lucky, we almost kissed that producer the next day when we went to work. He knew that we had been really pissed at him. "Be happy because you all would have been gone," he said, relieved also. If we'd gotten our way that day, the Tops would have been gone in 1988. Our epithet would have been, "Down in Lockerbie." This was our sign that it was nowhere near our time to go. When we got off the plane 2 days later in Detroit, all kinds of newspaper people and reporters were waiting for us, but we didn't feel like talking. I said, "Look, I'm devastated about what happened. It was a tragedy, but I'm very happy that I'm home. I can't wait to start sharing Christmas with my family." And as the new year rolled in, I was grateful to be alive. I realized that I might be down, but I'm not out. This sentiment was reinforced when we were notified that the Four Tops had been voted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. An act can't be put on the ballot until 25 years after their first record, and we were put on the ballot 25 years after the release of our first hit record in 1964. We were told that the vote among our peers had been unanimous, which felt wonderful. We were among a very elite group of our fellow artists honored that year, among them singers Hank Ballard, Louis Armstrong, Simon and Garfunkel, The Four Seasons, Bobby Darin, and The Platters. The induction ceremony took place in the ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria in New York, and to our great surprise, the artist who introduced us was Stevie Wonder. What a heartfelt tribute he gave. Any doubts we had about our place in history or our musical contribution were chased away by the love and respect given to us that night. Excepting on stage, we even sang a little a cappella number to let everyone know we still had it. Even we were impressed reading the program notes, which said, between 1964 and 1988, the Four Tops made Billboard's Hot 100 chart 45 times and its R&B chart 52 times. 24 of their singles made the top 40, and 7 of those entered the top 10. The only thing that can outlast the Four Tops lineup is their incredible body of work. That recognition from our fellow artists helped us reconnect with what we knew in our hearts, something we'd lost sight of when the record execs told us we had no more value. We were loved and appreciated. We had created a body of work which no one could take away from us. Our loyal fans all over the world would pay to hear us perform. We went back on the road touring, giving concerts, booking engagements, and singing in front of live audiences, something we loved doing and had done from the very beginning. We'd started out singing in a basement house party in Detroit and built our career from there long before ever setting foot in a sound studio. Having come full circle, it was time for us to spread our wings and explore different possibilities. I decided to try my hand once again in the restaurant business. Just before Lockerbie, the Four Tops had been honored by Governor Blanchard of Michigan, who declared June 18, 1987 as Four Tops Day. We were invited to Lansing, the state capital, to meet dignitaries, receive a nice tribute, and take a tour of the governor's mansion. I brought my mother along with me for the day. She was especially thrilled when she got to sit at the governor's desk in his big chair. I could see her shaking her head, thinking she'd never seen the day. On the radio, we'd heard the proclamation that it was Four Tops Day. Our music was being played non-stop. At the end of that wonderful day, when I took my mother back home, she was almost crying. "Mama, you were the first one to tell me to sing. Remember you made me sing when I was a little boy?" She just sat there shaking her head, too overcome to speak. "This is your glory too," I told her. It had been almost 15 years since she'd first heard me sing with the Tops at the Rooster Tail. We'd come a long way since she'd given me her approval. Now at the governor's mansion, she saw how far I had come. She wasn't with me the next year when we were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In fact, at that time, she was close to passing. Being inducted into the Hall of Fame was probably one of the few things that could have pulled me out of the dumps with her health failing. She died not long after that, but in that moment we could savor Four Tops Day, both of us probably reflecting back to when Central State University had given me a college scholarship and I'd blown it off to sing. We just sat together, feeling what we didn't have to put into words, knowing how much we'd both been blessed. The next day, something told me to reach out to Governor Blanchard for a helping hand. I'd been waiting to hear from the Comerica Bank about a loan application Piper and I had made to build a house in the Palmer Woods section of Detroit. We'd been looking at houses until we realized that we would be better off designing and building our dream home rather than renovating one. Piper had designed a gorgeous house and was working with an architect drawing up plans. Now we were just waiting to hear from the bank. I'd been introduced to the head of the Bankers Association of Michigan at Four Tops Day. I asked the governor if he could put me in touch with someone to try to move the process along. Within 24 hours, the bank called to tell me our loan had been approved. We were ecstatic, grateful for the blessings that came as a result of my music. We were also grateful that we had been shown love from the state and city, which enabled us to build our dream house in Detroit. We'd always felt a loyalty to our hometown. We wanted to demonstrate that by investing our money in the city and raising our family there. That sense of giving back to the city also fueled my desire to make an exciting investment in a floating restaurant on the Detroit River. The SS Lansdowne was a historic barge that had once ferried vehicles back and forth between Detroit and Windsor, Canada. It had been converted into a 294-foot restaurant with 2 dining rooms, a banquet hall, and a skytop lounge, which we envisioned turning into a casino. Bringing gambling to the city was a direction Detroit was headed in an effort to bring income. After many people fled, the tax base had eroded, and the car industry was dying. My cousin Darnell Keigler, a respected dentist in the area, was interested in restoring historic boats. He presented me with the possibility of being his partner in this restaurant and banquet business. Even though the restaurant had been shuttered for a while, I could envision the Lansdowne as an exciting spot for nightlife on the waterfront. Piper didn't agree with me. It took lots of convincing to talk her into it. Ultimately, she gave in. Probably because she could tell I was really excited and needed a project to throw myself into, since I was no longer spending long nights in the recording studio. Plus, it would only be open on weekends, which seemed manageable. Darnell and I signed a lease, putting up the initial investment with Mayor Coleman Young helping us to get an additional grant from the city. I put everything I had into making it work, including getting the best Cajun chef I could find to come to Detroit from New Orleans to create a delicious, authentic menu. We made sure each one of our dining rooms and the jazz lounge downstairs was decorated beautifully. A huge aquarium filled with exotic fish ran the entire length of the room downstairs. Our waitstaff were well trained by our excellent general manager. We had him vetted and felt confident he could handle our ambitious venture. The food was so good we had many faithful customers from all walks of life. One of our regular customers would come to the back door of the kitchen every Saturday night with her own iron kettle for the chef to fill up with Landon's special gumbo. Even Aretha Franklin, who was a great cook herself, loved our cooking. I felt so proud to help create a top-shelf, unique dining experience in downtown Detroit during its hard times. But after a year of operations and support in the community, our floating venture was tanking fast. Despite all of our preparations and the considerable cash infusion my cousin and I were making out of pocket each week, we badly needed financial help. Luckily, Darnell found a local businessman with available funds and business ties that we didn't really question. He gave us over $1 million to help resuscitate the business. It wasn't until after the Lansdowne's closing that he was arrested for dealing narcotics, and we discovered the truth of his questionable business dealings. Our association with him came under scrutiny. Luckily, I had been careful not to associate with him directly or give him a requested partnership in the business. I'd kept my distance. I could not believe that what started as an innocent business venture became so detrimental. It put my family, my standing in the community, and my career at risk. Fortunately, the hard lesson I had learned years before, when I had gambled away the earnings belonging to the Plus4 musicians, was seared into my consciousness. Never take what doesn't belong to you. I was able to substantiate that I had not misappropriated funds or used any of our investors' money for my personal use, and that I had no business ties to his other dealings. I could account for every single penny which had been borrowed solely by the business for the business. I had not taken $1 for myself. Thank God I came out unscathed by telling the truth, not hiding anything, and providing an honest accounting of my records. I humbly came out of the Landanon experience only too happy to refocus all my energy back into the group. And also, knowing more than anything, I needed to listen to my wife. Piper had been after me to stop my drinking for quite a while. She was always like an angel on my shoulder, but I didn't take her advice right away, promising that I'd stop when the time was right. Finally, one night I came home drunk and she confronted me. You're going to have to make a choice. Either you're going to give up drinking, smoking blunt, or whatever it is that you're doing, or you're going to come home and we won't be here. You have to become a real husband and father. God knows I didn't want to lose her. We'd had our ups and downs, that's life, but I knew I wasn't going to let anything take her away from me. She's the reason I'm alive today. If Piper hadn't come along, I would have eventually killed myself one way or another. Not intentionally, just self-destruction. Too much life, too much show business, too much being out there. Piper balanced it. She came at the exactly right time. I know God sent her. Meanwhile, Piper and I had been looking for a church home. We'd been to about 5 or 6 different services trying to find the right one. Piper's mother, Sarah, suggested that we attend the African Methodist Episcopal AME church she was going to. We went with her one Sunday morning and enjoyed it immensely. Everything felt so familiar, the service, the choir, and especially the Reverend and his wife, Dr. and Mrs. Reverend Gregory Ingram. She was the assistant pastor, and they both had a wonderful way of communicating the message. Piper and I remarked to each other how much we liked it. After a few weeks, she joined. I hesitated, saying I needed to think about it for a while. I just wasn't ready yet. Around that time, I had a show in Las Vegas. I was getting ready to party in my room one night with a group of friends, a bottle of Courvoisier, some cocaine, and some weed. Out of the blue, a voice in my head spoke to me. I'm tired of this shit, man. This is not me. I proceeded to kick everyone out, knowing I just can't do this anymore. If I don't stop now, I'm never going to. Thank God I never went past cocaine. Never did and never would. None of the Four Tops did. Growing up around the North End in Detroit, there were a lot of heroin addicts. I was always fearful of that fate. I'd heard that once you shoot up, you might as well keep going. Just one shot, that's all it takes. I did start liking cocaine, however. Everything was so vivid, it makes you want to just keep going. You want to drink more, smoke more, make love more, but you begin to enjoy it too much. I know that I did. That night in Vegas, I reached the point where it was now or never. I had to back off from it. When I got home, I told Piper that I'd made up my mind. I'm not drinking. I'm not smoking. This is it. Case closed. But I knew I needed strength. I got down on my knees and prayed. Lord, I need your help. I prayed and prayed. Then I heard his voice. I will be with you in this house for a while. I know it's hard for people to believe, but it happened. Like I've known all through my life, I know he's been there for me. That's how I stopped drinking. Just like that. I didn't drink another drop of alcohol for almost 20 years. After that, only a glass of wine or champagne now and then on special occasions. A week later, I joined the church. The first order of business was attending a class for new members. When they handed me the book detailing the history of the church, I almost fell to the floor. Staring up at me was the name Virgil Landis Eckridge, my grandfather, the founding pastor of this very church. Oak Grove was a name that I had remembered hearing as a kid, and I associated Oak Grove with a place, not the name of the church. Plus, the church had moved. My memories of it were distant, but they all came flooding back. I remember my family talking about my grandfather starting his church in little tents on Wyoming and 7 Mile Road, then a mostly rural area. AME was founded in the tradition of the English Methodist churches in the 1700s. The first congregants pitched tents for their services out in the wilderness. Oak Grove was my grandfather's first church back in the 20s. After initiating the church in the tents, they moved into the first Oak Grove AME building on Cherry Lawn and Pembroke Avenue, where my granddaddy was the first pastor. Now, here I was, over half a century later, finding my way back home. If that wasn't affirmation, I don't know what is. I began to see my life as a mosaic of pieces coming together in a story that had already been written. The lady in white foretold it outside my grandfather's church when I was just a little child, while he was inside preaching the word. It was there that the vision of my future came to her, and everything she told me has come to pass. She didn't say that I was going to be popular in Detroit. She said the whole world. The whole world is going to love you. It was astonishing to me then. Now, as the years go by, it becomes more and more astonishing. After I joined the church in 1994, I told the pastor I wanted to be an active member. I didn't want to just sit there on Sundays and enjoy the service. Plus, I knew that working in the church would help me with what I was fighting against. He asked if I wanted to sing in the choir. I told him that I'd love that, but I wouldn't be able to attend most of the rehearsals, and I'd feel bad just walking in and singing without doing what was required of everyone else. The next week, he called me into his office after the service and asked me if I'd heard of his men's ministry outreach group, Masters Men. He said he wanted me to head up the ministry as a facilitator, along with a younger man named Milton Weathers, the son of a preacher who would help me. I thought he was kidding, telling him that I was no preacher. The Reverend explained that the role didn't require preaching. It was teaching men how to be better men, better family men, better husbands, better men on their jobs. Oak Grove needed something to attract more men to the church, to make it more exciting, since the congregation at that time was made up of mostly women. I believe the men will follow you, he said. All you have to do is just read this little booklet. Your first meeting will be this coming Tuesday. I went home, read the booklet, tried to bone up, and talked to Milton on the phone a few times. We decided that we'd talk about being good parishioners in our first meeting on Tuesday and follow up with a prayer meeting on Wednesday. At that very first meeting, the Reverend introduced me and had me open with prayer. I had never prayed out loud in front of people before. It's totally different than praying to yourself. I stopped 2 or 3 times, not knowing where to go next. I just said things that came into my mind, and the Reverend said that I did okay for the first meeting. I was relieved, until right away he gave me another assignment. He asked me to speak at a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center called Ameritime the next week. He wanted me to tell them my story, how I put my trust in the Lord, and so forth. That was too much like preaching, I told him. If you put a band and 3 guys next to me, I'd probably be okay, I said, trying to joke my way out of it. Chapter 9, Part B. He kept reassuring me. All I had to do was talk about my life. I could write down what I wanted to say on paper. People would respect me for just being there. They knew who I was. They'd listen to me. It's something about you. I think men will follow you, he said. I followed his advice, went home, and wrote out my speech on what had happened in my life, how I'd just stopped drinking, and giving advice about what to do and what not to do. When the day arrived, I went up to the podium shaking like a leaf. I had my paper in front of me, but it was all handwritten. Even though I had on my glasses, I couldn't see the words that well. For a minute, I froze. Then I took a breath and just told them who I was. I started talking, and I must have talked for a good 15 minutes about the things I'd done, how the Lord came into my life and helped me. I told them that it wasn't too long ago that I had totally given up drinking and drugs. I was one step away from being in the chair next to them. I told them how easy it was to get out of that chair with faith and religion. Apparently, my speaking went down so well, they asked me to come back and speak the next week. I had to admit to the Reverend that I wasn't as uncomfortable as I thought I'd be. He said his instincts were right, reaffirming that I had what it took to be a good teacher and leader, especially for black men. Working as the facilitator of Masters Men became a very important part of my life. Growing into that role, becoming a good leader, I started volunteering in the church kitchen on Sunday mornings. I cooked and served the ladies who ate breakfast there before the service. They would look at me, knowing I was a top, wearing an apron, being their waiter, and just nod their head approvingly. Serving them, being a humble man, I was brought all the way down to being a real servant of God. The Lord really gets to you 100% by serving people. I was still a singing star, but even if I was working out on the West Coast, I'd catch a red eye to get back to church on Sunday morning. Everyone praised me for that. I loved what I was doing. I started a walkathon for the church and began the biggest fish fry in Detroit. Most of all, I enjoyed working as a facilitator for Masters Men. While I was there, we had 8 ministers come out of the program. All of these men have churches of their own now, including my own son, Nazim Fakir. Being the child of an entertainer isn't easy. For the parent, it's difficult when you're on the road or recording. You believe that the music is everything, that your career or your life's work should take precedence. When you finally realize that there is nothing more important than just being there for your family, it's usually too late. Your kids are grown. They've moved away. You've missed out on forging that relationship which you both needed. My 3 kids, Abdul, Nazim, and Kai, were adults by the time I started being aware of this. When they were young, I paid for their upbringing, and I tried my best to guide them, to get them out of scrapes, and to help them get good educations. Each one of them had their own challenges. I was grateful that when Piper and I had our beautiful daughter, Farah, I was more aware of what being a good father meant, and that Piper was such an amazing mother. Nazim was the son who was always getting in trouble as a young man. DUIs, kicked out of high school, dropping out of Florida A&M University. With a full scholarship, he was so smart, getting locked up for drinking. I tried everything I could to help him. I got to the point that I was pretty much through with him. But there he was, sitting at Masters Men in my second week as a facilitator, listening attentively. I could see that he enjoyed it. After a few weeks, he actually joined the church. He seemed to be getting a lot out of it, but I couldn't have predicted what happened next. "Dad," he said, "the Lord has called me to preach." "What do you mean preach? Where does he want you to at?" I couldn't help but laugh. "I'm not kidding. The Lord has called to me to preach many times, but I've been running. I don't want to run anymore. I want to be a preacher, and I'm going to preach for the Lord." I realized he was serious. I told him I thought it was wonderful. He'd already made this great AME connection, but he'd have to go to college and finish his degree. "Oh, I'm going to do all of that. Don't worry," he said. "I'm serious." So we prayed on it right then and there. And sure enough, he went to the University of Detroit. He signed up and got a degree in business, while all the time working with a mortgage company. Nazim graduated with high honors. From there, he went on to Garrett Theology School in Chicago, where he got his master's degree. The only thing that stopped him from finishing his doctorate was pastoring his first church in Chicago. It was in bad shape and needed to be resuscitated. He did such a great job that he was given the pastorship of a large congregation in Minneapolis. He still leads it successfully and is a prominent minister and leader in the community. One of his many important contributions has been starting a medical program to support people with diabetes, helping them to lose weight, a challenge that he himself overcame, a diabetic losing over 80 pounds. I guess you can say it was in his blood. His great-grandfather, my maternal grandfather, Virgil Landis Eckridge, was an AME minister. His grandfather, my father, Nazim Ali Fakir, was so devout that he fought to raise his kids as Muslims. Though my mother won the religious battle, my father never gave up his faith in America. He attended the mosque faithfully. It was really gratifying that at the same time I was turning my life around, embracing God to help me give up drinking. So was my son. That's when it hit me that he had always been following me since he was a little baby. I hadn't been aware of it. He'd follow me in his mind, and even into bars I went to. As a young boy, he was trying to learn from me about how to be a man. Not until I started leading the Master's men did it all come together for him, and for me. It made me think back to the day when I felt I became a man myself, by honoring, respecting, and taking care of my family. I was in my 20s, and it would be a few more years before we'd sign with Motown. Times were still hard. Me and Levi went to my dad's apartment. "Dad, I need some money," I said, knowing a lecture would be forthcoming. "Yeah, fucker, you always need some money," he said, shaking his head. "You hang around at night with these gangsters. I know a lot of people that will work for peanuts, but I don't know no motherfucker who work for peanut shells." He didn't think much of my ambition. He knew that I was trying to sing, but he hadn't come to hear me yet. But he gave me the $20 I needed that night. A few weeks later, when we were singing at the 20 grand, he was sick, but he came to see me anyway. He too finally approved. "You can sing good. I hope you make some money, man." I bought him a lot of drinks that night. It was the last time I saw him, and he was happy. He always kept ties to his roots, but I didn't know that he was soon going back to Bangladesh, where he married a 16-year-old girl. I was relieved when I heard he was living well back there. A couple years after he left came the sad news of his passing away of cholera. As I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to my father, I went down to the Indian clubhouse in Detroit where he and his friends would hang out during the week and eat dinner together on Sundays. I asked them how I could do a ceremony to honor him here, a burial rite or a memorial. At first, they didn't understand. They told me that no one did that for their family members in this country. I insisted. It's what I wanted to do. That's how much I loved him. In chatting with Bill Cabas, the owner of the 20 grand, I mentioned the journey I was on to honor my father. He said he would introduce me to a Chaldean priest who might be able to assist me. The priest agreed, but first I would have to find a pure lamb and personally watch him cut the lamb's throat, spill its blood, and make sure it was cooked a special way. He took me down to the Eastern Market to find a pure lamb. I paid for it and watched him cut its throat. Next, it was loaded onto a truck and taken to a butcher shop to be skinned and cooked. I accompanied it to make sure that it was taken care of the way I was instructed and that it would be delivered to the feast properly. The next day, my whole family, my sisters and brothers, and all of my dad's old friends gathered together at the Indian clubhouse. The priest said a prayer and told the guests that this was the first time he knew of someone in this country doing this for their father who went back home. He raised a toast, praised this young man. Then we had a big feast. The meat was so good. After that, I felt so strong, like I could do anything. I remembered a verse that I'd learned in church. "Honor thy mother and thy father, and your days will be long upon this earth, which the Lord thy God giveth thee." I became such a confident young man that day. It felt like I had grown at least a foot. All that day, people thanked me, saying how great a man my father was, how much he loved his children. He hated to leave, but he had to go home. I understood. Somehow, I knew it was my place to give him a homegoing worthy of him. It would have been nice if I could have done something like that for Billy Eckstein. He was like our dad in show business. Billy picked up our education where my dad left off. At that moment in our lives, we were young men needing guidance. He handpicked us to do the supper club circuit with him. When we went to Motown, we returned the favor. We brought him along with us, trying to help him revive his fading career. We had just signed with Motown and approached Barry with another deal. Since he told us that he wanted to start a jazz label, we asked, "How would you like Mr. Billy Eckstein?" Barry's eyes lit up. "Oh man, he's a great singer. He's like Sarah Vaughan and the rest of them. I'd love to have him." So Barry signed Billy. When his album was finished, something went wrong. Billy cussed him out. He was getting to that part of his career where he was really angry about the way he was being treated. He was over at Barry's house and said exactly what was on his mind, then just walked out. He ended the relationship just like that. Billy Eckstein was a brazen kind of guy. He didn't take shit from nobody, and he was mad at show business. Frank Sinatra was coming up at the same time he was. Billy was just as talented, but as a black singer, he didn't get the same treatment. He still made a great living, but all that stuff started to wear on him. Eventually, he lost his beautiful wife, his kids, the amazing home he built in Las Vegas. As good as he was on stage, he was very hurt about all kinds of stuff. He started taking a lot of dope and got addicted to drugs. In his last days, when we were performing in Vegas, he'd come to our show and sit with us and talk. He'd tell wonderful stories, then ask, "You got $500 on you?" Things got so bad we had to pay his bills for the last 2 or 3 months before he passed away. The whole jazz community mourned him, acknowledging that Billy was one of the greatest singers we'd ever had. Duke Ellington called him the essence of cool. Lionel Hampton said, "We were so proud of him because he was the first black singer singing popular songs in our race. He was one of the greatest singers of that era. He was our singer. He was so cool, even Quincy Jones wanted to emulate him. I looked up to Mr. B as an idol. I wanted to dress like him, talk like him, patterned my whole life as a musician and as a complete person in the image of dignity that he projected. But Quincy also understood the pain Billy had to endure in the 50s. If he'd been white, the sky would have been the limit. As it was, he didn't have his own radio or TV show, much less a movie career. He had to fight the system, so things never quite fell into place. Because our group came along a decade or so afterwards, we were able to follow the trail he blazed for us. We reaped the rewards from battles he fought. Billy taught me one of the greatest lessons I learned in show business, if not the greatest. One night in Lake Tahoe back in 1962, the house at Harrah's was full, and he called me backstage. "Duke, look out there," he said, as we looked out over the audience. "What do you see?" "Man, it's a full house," I answered. "Look again, look closer." I stared out over a sea of people. They look like the same faces I see everywhere. It's beautiful. Mostly white people. Chapter 9, Part C. "Here's what you see," he said, his eyes filled with love. "Those people out there, they've been taking care of me, my desires, my family, ever since my first record, Jelly Jelly. If you get a chance to get maybe 1 million fans, Duke, take care of them. 'Cause if you do, they will take care of you for the rest of your life." He had a tear in his eye. "They've been taking care of me no matter what I've done all my life. Whenever you get a chance, pat them on the back, love them. Don't play them cheap, because they will be your life. If you're that fortunate, and I know you will be. I never forgot that, and I never will. I pass it along to the youngsters who ask me for advice about making it in this business, what it takes. I tell them, guts and blood. The blood is your hard work, your sweat, your tears. Your guts is going past your fear, your inner doubts, and what people tell you you can't do. But more than that, it takes love. You gotta love what you're doing. You gotta love singing or performing. Whatever it is that you're doing, you gotta love it. You gotta be committed to your last breath. But as much as you love the music, in order to survive, there must be something more. I've given a great deal of thought to what happens to great artists like Billy Eckstine and Michael Jackson. Why did Michael feel like he needed to be so high, or Prince, any of them? I think that as youngsters, they come up with a gift or a talent, and that talent takes over. As they move up in the world, they lose their childhood, their youth, and they become whatever the music is, whatever that drive is that keeps them going. They never get to experience what they really are like without the music. They live only for the music and the times on stage and in the studio. It becomes their whole life. The other part of their feelings, just being themselves, is overtaken by the creativity and the music. Whenever they're not on stage, they are looking for something to give them that same feeling, so they turn to dope or something else. They don't understand the raw feeling of being who they really are, because who they are in their minds is the music. That's what their mind is telling their body. They take drugs to recreate that great feeling in their normal life, but they can't fill that space. They have to learn to live outside the music. Looking at the great singers of our generation, so many of them suffered with alcohol or drug addiction. Sam Cooke, Teddy Pendergrass, Jackie Wilson, Prince, Whitney, Marvin Gaye. Each one of them is different. Their lives unfolded in different ways, and it happened at different stages in each of their lives, according to their bodies, their minds, and where they were in the business. But somewhere along the way, that unhealthy part of being a musician or singer, that imbalance in their lives, took over, and it was stronger than the natural part. I came to my senses just in time. I eventually realized the greatest high I could get is from the love, not what I put in my body. The applause and the looks from the audience of respect and love and thanks. That's what makes me feel better than anything. That's the high I want to feel. And I had to learn how to feel good without the music. Getting sober allowed me to constantly reveal to myself who I really am. I am a loving family man. I love my family. I love being at home, making my wife, children, and grandchildren happy. I know that for me, there are two separate worlds, my music and my home life, and I've learned to enjoy them both. I got close to thinking it was all one. I separated just in time. I thank God for giving me the strength to say, I can't do this anymore. This is not right. I don't feel right. And I think that has something to do with me still being here. I've talked this over with Otis Williams, the last surviving member of the Temptations. Otis was always the leader of that group. He still is. We've talked about us both surviving, both still performing, how we've managed to stay alive. Two of the greatest singers in the original Temptations, Eddie Kendricks and David Ruffin, couldn't survive the business. In 1968, during Motown's biggest days, Eddie and David decided to leave the group. Obie and I tried to talk them out of it. We were all great friends. They each had their personal reasons. They also didn't like how the money was being split among the group, following orders, to be honest. In every group, there are disciplinary rules that you have to accept. There is usually one member who sets up the rules. It's usually not democratic, but it has to be done. They felt they were big enough to make up their own rules. Once the Tops and the Temps were on the Motown Revue tour together, and instead of riding with everyone else, David had himself a limo. We were buddies, and sometimes I'd ride with him. Partying, drinking, doing a little coke. We once caught a parking valet in Norfolk, Virginia, trying to steal clothes from the car. We beat him up right in front of the box office. David wanted to stab him, like back in the day, gang fighting on the streets in Detroit. but I stopped him before he lost it completely. David was a good guy. He loved being around people, performing, hanging out, but as loving as he was, he had a pompous side. I called him Lord Jim because he carried himself like he was some kind of royalty, but he did it in a nice way, without being totally arrogant. Eddie, on the other hand, didn't talk a lot. A nice, low-key, simple guy. When he wasn't high or having fun, he was just kinda quiet. He could sing really well. He had a beautiful tenor voice. In fact, Eddie sang the tenor part for me for the recording of Bernadette when I was not feeling well. We tried to talk Eddie and David out of leaving the Temptations. We loved them. They were like brothers. We'd climbed the mountain of success together. Obi and I tried to impress upon them that they had spent their whole lives working to get to this point. Are you kidding? You came from a hole in the wall and now you're world famous. We gave them all kinds of examples, like that they should be able to put up with any small annoyances to keep making such good money. We talked to them like preachers, like brothers, whatever we could think of. They still wouldn't listen. They both left the group at the same time, each recording solo albums at Motown. After a year or two, their careers were in free fall. Often, if the world loves you as a member of a group, when you leave, you're just not as strong as a solo artist. Something is lost, you lose your way, especially if the group keeps getting higher and higher. You're out there by yourself, left behind, all alone. David died of a cocaine overdose in 1991 when he was just 50 years old. Eddie lived just a year longer. His cause of death was listed as lung cancer, but many believe that drug abuse was also a contributing factor. I attended the funeral in his hometown of Birmingham, Alabama, which built a beautiful park memorializing him. An earlier member of the Temps, Paul Williams, one of its founders, died years before in 1973 when he took his life after being kicked out the group for drinking. All of the Temps were such sweet, talented guys. Too much living, too young. Losing good friends, fellow singers from that golden era in our youth reminded me that life was short. It scared me to think that if I had not stopped drinking, doing drugs, and partying, I might be the next one in the dirt beside them. The question of my mortality loomed in the back of my mind. It was something I would soon have to confront despite my best efforts to turn my life around.